Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever webinar that I publish here on PPA. So I've been wanting to do this for some time until I figured out and cleared my schedule. Here we are with a major overhaul to PPA. We are stepping away from the no-code and SaaS era, and now we are officially stepping in to the Claude and OpenClaw era. So really, the agent era has begun some time ago, but now is really the time to shift and dive in, because if you don't, we are going to get left behind. You're going to get trampled. You're going to lose the game really, really quick. And this is what it's about now in the world of business or even small brands. The market has become even more competitive than before. There is a global race for AI dominance and alignment, and intelligence is on the rise. Each Claude or Sonnet model or Opus model or even OpenAI model now is smarter than the last one, and it's just very difficult to keep up with. So if you feel like I feel and you're excited about this to see where we're headed, then you're in the right place. Thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. All right, so the first thing we are going to discuss is the true $2 trillion wiped off the market by major SaaS companies, such as Atlassian. If you've ever used Loom or Trello before, our favorite Kanban board application that gives you free access to maybe up to 10 boards, which is great. I still use it, by the way, every now and then. I still have some notes that I got to transfer to my current system. That's Atlassian. It's owned by Atlassian. Loom is owned by Atlassian. ServiceNow, Salesforce. They're like, these numbers are fluctuating, right? This started in I believe like late February until now, and it's around the time when Anthropic launched the plugins feature. It's also around the time like there are effects that trickled in from OpenAI acquiring OpenClaw, and you're seeing seat-based SaaS models, subscription models heading out the window. Really, the reasoning behind this is quite simple, right? So executives are asking themselves, specifically around the time when they started experimenting with OpenClaw, right? If you watch the All In podcast, you already know some of what's going on there. They thought to themselves, if 10 agents really can do the heavy lifting of 100 employees, then why do we need 100 employees? You can see how this makes sense in business, because you don't have to pay salaries, you don't have to pay health insurance, you don't need to get them dental. They don't take time off. They just keep running 24/7. So really, SMEs and enterprise crowd, let's say, it makes a lot of sense for them to experiment with OpenClaw. And well, basically because they can afford it, right? The API keys that you need to run the API builds are quite high, right? So it makes sense that there's a lot of adoption going on, especially executives, SMEs, and serious operators who can afford running Opus 4.6 for their OpenClaw are doing that right now. But a lot of them don't stay and use only OpenClaw. They either build their own version or they just notice that, hey, there's actually a better alternative. And I'll get to that in a moment. So if you're on X like me, then you are one of those people who can see the news come up fresh about what's going on. Like, this is one of the most prominent voices on X. Naval here is saying software will proliferate just as video, music, and writing did. The market structure will shift from a fat middle to a mega aggregators and a long tail. Essentially what he's trying to say here, that the software index has fallen and anybody can create software now with tools such as Claude Code, which we're going to get into in a moment. And it's becoming easier because the models are getting smarter, and there's eventually just going to be a proliferation. Any tool you want internally, either for your small business or for your company, you could just vibe code it. And this is where we're at the moment. So this has been widely reported on all across the board. And you can see the bloodbath that Claude and OpenClaw are creating in the market. So yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Not only did OpenClaw start this tsunami, which the CEO of OpenClaw of Anthropic talked about, he's also said that nobody's ready for this tsunami, which is extremely true, evidently. And you're going to start to see more and more examples of this as we hurl towards an accelerated AI adoption at a global scale. But it's also because Anthropic launched plugins feature that further made the case in point that Claude itself as an application can really replace most of the SaaS products that all of us use on a daily basis. And guess what? You could just subscribe for as little as $20 a month to Claude, and most of the applications that you pay subscription fees to, you don't really need anymore, because you could just pay $20 a month for Claude and you got access to a lot of these advanced features. You can connect MCP servers, you can connect your N8N instance, you can have it read your email, you can have it check your calendar to turn it into a personal assistant. Now you can even create cron jobs or like scheduled tasks. And as long as your computer is awake, it will run those scheduled tasks for you. Also, there is, of course, an advanced like level to this where you can go ahead and create. It's different on Mac versus Windows, but if you know what you're doing, you can actually run scripts or host scripts on a VPS server, for example, and have it do things for you while you sleep and your computer shut down. So the funny thing is that, major institution or banking institutions such as JP Morgan predicted that this is going to happen post 2028, but the market said, no, it's going to happen right now. So this is the era that we live in. It's just shock surprise. It's all rolled up into one, specifically with AI. Okay, so in comes OpenClaw. And the amazing thing about OpenClaw, it was initially released in November of 2025. So it's very, very recent. And currently the GitHub repo, which is where the source code lives, excuse me, is just 3,000 shy of 300,000 stars, which surpasses Linux to possibly become the highest rated GitHub repo in all of human history. Absolutely crazy. Now, it has caused shortages in Mac minis, which is also crazy. Now, in New York, like for example, there's somebody talking about a Mac mini shortage where he was going around trying to find Mac minis in New York and he couldn't find it. There's just shortages all over the place. So people are really, really complaining about this. And it's because they think they need OpenClaw. They need a Mac mini to run their OpenClaw. The funny thing is the creator of OpenClaw said you only need 2 virtual CPUs and 4 gigs of RAM, which is about a $5 VPS private server that you can get off of Hostinger, by the way. And I'm going to leave you a link to my Hostinger so you can get a discount. And it does get me a little bit of a kick, and you can get your own VPS server. And I'll show you how to install OpenClaw in a moment. Very, very easy, but there's a lot of things to consider. So you actually do not need a Mac mini to run OpenClaw. So let's look at Hostinger, right? So you can get a VPS server off of Hostinger and you can just download OpenClaw immediately. So this is a new feature in Hostinger. Let me zoom in a little bit. It's called Docker Manager. And Docker essentially, let's just think of it as architecture. I don't want to get too technical. That creates virtual containers that have to be stored on some kind of server, in this case, a private VPS server. And it has like information about the application. It's drawing from the Git repo essentially and installing an image on your server. That's a very simplified, watered down version of what it is. So if you go to the catalog, you can just search OpenClaw. You're going to find it here. You click deploy. There's a lot of configuration that has to go on, of course. You can open up your instance, and then you have to enter environment variables, API keys, and things along those lines. And then you could start giving it access. So it's basically like running what are called bash commands in the backend, or git bash, or whatever it needs to do to just like open links and run commands on your server instance, and so that it can open up its gateway and get things done for you. So it actually does things. Like, it's very good architecture, and it really is genius, clearly. But there is a major, major downside to it. Now, I want to show you one more thing, and this is the way I tested it out to install it. This is what's called Coolify. It's an alternative to Heroku or Vercel, where you can essentially host applications right here. You can get an API key and give it to your Claude Code and just have it deploy for you, check on deployment errors and things along those lines. So in the future, while these courses on Claude Code, I'll be dropping them in PPA, what you can do is check out a brief course I'm going to make about Coolify for how to install Coolify. I'll explain what it is, how you can use it, how you can connect it to your IDE, give your agents access to it so that the agent can pretty much do everything for you, diagnose and deploy applications for you, essentially maybe while you sleep. So same thing, you go to projects, and when you're going to deploy your resource, you search for OpenClaw. You can always click here to view documentation, and you can install it. Now, I've already installed it or deployed it, but I stopped using it because I started running into several security issues. So I highly, highly recommend you do it on Coolify. We'll be talking about this very soon, like how to use Coolify, what it is, and how you could really take advantage of it. Really, this is all you need. You need VPS infrastructure, you need Coolify, and just create and deploy your applications there. Even for your clients, this is infrastructure that you can use. Okay, so let's talk about security. So over 30,000 exposed instances of OpenClaw have been found, right? So this is, again, dating back to February. Cybersecurity news and many, many security-based institutions and researchers out there, we're running tests, and we're finding all these security vulnerabilities. Now, if you go into PPA, you go into Classroom and YouTube Archive, search down here, you're going to see the very first video I made about OpenClaw. And this is me really being surprised and thinking that we have some sort of AGI, because these agents, like, people were spinning up their own agents here and there, and they created a religion. They created games, virtual games. They started using the blockchain to trade crypto. And there's so much that happened. But I didn't give OpenClaw enough credit. It is excellent technology, really, if you have control over the infrastructure yourself and you're not letting somebody else deploy it for you. In my opinion, you want to be in control of your server. You want to have enough understanding of how things run, learn DevOps as much as you can by using tools like Coolify, which I'm going to teach. There's already a bunch of courses in progress that I'm going to post on PPA so that you learn how to secure it yourself. So I didn't give OpenClaw enough credit in this video, and I didn't know enough about the creator of OpenClaw. But now that I do, I think he's really a very nice and smart guy. Moving on. So that's where you find that video, and you will get essentially my reaction of what many others' reactions was like in the beginning when it came out. You know, this feels like, or it felt like at that time, but it still is a security concern to the extent that that the Frontier AI labs are actually hiring security experts. Like, if we check out Greg Brockman's account on X, for example, you're going to see he's actually saying, like, if you have a background in security, you're a security genius, now would be the time to apply to OpenAI. That's actually a tweet that Greg Brockman posted. So this is the situation we are in right now. And, it seems like it's going to get more secure as we go on. But the further we go on, OpenClaw is not going to be the leading technology. It would be the technology that started it all. But people are building on top of it or are borrowing ideas, and then they are moving on from there into other things. Just building different types of applications on that architecture. Okay, so lastly, I just wanted to show you the extent of what people did in the early days. They took OpenClaw and essentially changed it or adapted it to different languages and installed it on several Macs. Just look how many Mac Minis here. Each one is an instance of OpenClaw running, and they're essentially doing something for this company in China. So this is one of the more insane examples of what's happening here. And you can see there's 6. So there's even more on the floor. I don't know how many, maybe just 100 on each set of shelves. And they're monitoring them through this PC right here. And then there's a dashboard that likely OpenClaw spun up for this person to just stay in touch with everything that's going on. So this is why this is amazing technology, and it truly, truly changed where we are going. So really what's happening right now, and before we make the pivot or the segue into Anthropic, I want to essentially mention that OpenClaw showed what is possible, but Anthropic recently made it extremely accessible. And this is why I'm here today. This is why I'm making this as the #1 webinar in the series of 4, is because you need to understand that you don't need to go through the hassle of installing OpenClaw, because now Claude Code is essentially your team of AI agents, and it could do everything OpenClaw can. And the difference between the two is, wherever you use OpenClaw, you're going to have to pay for API keys, because you cannot use your Anthropic subscription to log in. You cannot authenticate with your Claude subscription. You're going to have to get an API key and then use it there. And if we're going to look at some metrics here, the best model with the best success rate on OpenClaw is Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.6. The second one, funny enough, is Anthropic Claude Sonnet 4 at 80.5%. Then we have OpenAI GPT 4.5, and then we have Opus 4.5 at number 4, and then Minimax 2.1 at 79.9 success rate. All of these are not bad. I guess you can say anything above 79 is good, so I'd start from here. Then they have Qwen 3 Coder, and I don't know, this is a little bit odd to me, but it says Claude Sonnet 4.6 is actually 77.6%. But as you can see, the top 10 are mostly dominated by Anthropic models. So that tells you something. So Anthropic has been in the news lately, and their signups surged about 183%. They became the #1 app on the App Store with 149K daily downloads, beating ChatGPT, which is not surprising. A lot of people, including some of you guys, have told me how frustrated you are with ChatGPT. I ditched ChatGPT back in November of last year. It is such an annoying model. Although I'll be honest with you, I tried Codex. It's not bad, but it's just not Claude. You know what I mean? And 2 times paid subscriptions. They've doubled their paid subscriptions, and ChatGPT uninstalls surged. And the reason for that is because Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, actually swooped in after Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, said no to the Department of War or the Pentagon. And, Sam Altman took the opportunity and signed the deal. And that's why people love Anthropic right now. And since this happened, the strain on their servers has been so evident that I can feel it on a daily basis. The service would be degraded. You can't use this model. You can't use that model. And the biggest aspect or product that's actually suffering right now is Claude Cowork, which every time I try to launch it, the virtual machine is down. But Claude Code really replaces that completely. And there's going to be a webinar on how to use Claude Code to organize your life and give the AI as much context as possible to essentially take the headache and pain away of having to go through all this chaos in the AI industry and your work and your life and organize everything, which I have. And so this is something I'm going to show you guys next week. So basically what happened is they sued the current administration because the current administration's Department of War labeled them as a supply chain risk. And this kind of did not hit well with a lot of people in the industry, because it's unprecedented to label an American company as a supply chain risk versus an adversary during a time of war. So a lot of people, including myself, saw that Anthropic really has a backbone. You don't usually see this kind of behavior from a company. So and they're doing great. They're trying to keep up with demand, although it's a little bit difficult. So really with Anthropic, people voted with their wallets. So you can see they've been all over the news. I'm just going to show you guys 2 articles here because they're both great articles, and they both give you just enough context to understand what happened. So let's go ahead and jump into pricing. So if you're doing OpenClaw, you're essentially doing 1 agent. You can kind of try to split it into more than 1 agent, but that's going to degrade the experience of OpenClaw. And if you're going to try to give it more than 7 skills, the AI is likely going to hallucinate because there's just going to be too much context for it to ingest. Now, this doesn't have to be the case if you're at least on the 5x max plan, which is really recommended. Don't mind the comment here. My AI probably did not understand. This is one thing Claude can do for you is it could be your full stack developer, but it could also be your co-CEO. It can be somebody you spitball ideas with. It can be your researcher. It could be your marketer. It could be your engineer. It could be your data analyst. I mean, the possibilities are endless. It could be your full stack web developer. It could be your designer. All of these are going to be courses where I'll show you guys how to give Claude a different personality and set of SOPs or skills so that it can carry out different tasks for you, even build or vibe code full applications for you or your clients. And of course, we are going to talk about security every single time. Matter of fact, actually, Anthropic launched a new feature that has to do with security and security reviews. So that's kind of baked into the product right now. So it's a gift that keeps on giving. If you're a super power user, you would go with the max 20x plan. Currently, I'm on the 5x plan and I do a lot with it. And I still get like, maybe at the end of the month, I have like 20% left. It really depends on your use cases, what you're doing, what you're trying to build. I know some of you guys are already on the 20x plan. I know somebody who does a lot of work on Upwork and he just keeps booking gigs and is on the 20x max plan. And like 1 month, I think it was maybe last month, he maxed the whole thing out, which is insane. So this is subsidized up to $3,000, I believe, like equivalent of API credits, which is quite a lot. So running on the 5x max plan, really, this is all my team. And I want to show you guys an example. So what you see here is a bunch of, let's see how many instances I have here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 agents running simultaneously. And right here on the left side, what you see is pretty much, these are all the instances right here, all the groups. So this is planning for the webinar. This is confidential. This one right here is updating the company website. And that's pretty much my designer, my web designer and web developer. This one is working on my Upwork account. Essentially just conducting some research that I gave it. I always give the AI a brain dump and it organizes everything. And the beautiful thing is that it's actually connected to a database in the background where all my data is saved and I can visualize it. I'm going to show you guys how to do that next week. So stay tuned for that because that's going to, I know for a fact, it's going to take a huge load off of your shoulders and you're going to love it. So I have my engineer right here and it pretty much, it's diagnosing MCP server or different issues. Today I connected the Google Workspace CLI. Here, this one is handling a Stripe dispute. This one is handling a potential lead. Yeah, and I already mentioned all of these. So there's a lot of confidential data in there and it's connected to a local drive. So I'm going to blur a lot of this information out, but I'm going to create a mock example of this to show you how to set this up. This is VS Code. So this is just an example. All of these are Claude Code, right? But this is the CLI. So the version that I'll show you guys how to use. Is this one right here. And this is perfect if you're a complete beginner because it looks very similar to the Claude chat. And there's many ways you can access it. If you have the desktop app, then you basically just click on code up here. You cannot access Claude Code if you have an Anthropic tab open on your browser, nor can you access Upwork at the moment. You can only access chat, but you can access Claude Code if you have the desktop application right here. And this is their mascot right here. You can connect it to a local drive right here, and you set up the environment, and then you choose the model depending on how huge the task you're working on is. If you're doing coding and it's a difficult problem, maybe you should likely use Opus 4.6. If you're doing an everyday task, then Sonnet 4.6. And pro tip, do not use Haiku 4.5 if you're already using OpenClaw because it is prone to prompt injections. It is not the most secure. So only use it in an isolated environment, or if you're doing something that doesn't require a lot of thinking and effort, energy kind of behind the task, then Haiku 4.5 is for you. So this is inside of VS Code, and it's pretty much the same as the version on the desktop application. It is pretty much exactly the same. Just this looks a little bit different. So the way you usually start here is you go into plan mode. And of course, they change the color here for you to indicate. And then you could start planning out what you want to do. And it would give you a plan and it would ask you some questions. You go back and forth with it. And then essentially when you're good to go, you would set the permissions mode. You could always go here into settings and then you type Claude Code and you could click allow dangerously skip permissions, which is done in a very, very different way on the desktop application. It does sound dangerous, but it's not that dangerous, and unless it is not dangerous if you know what you're doing and you tell it to stay within a specific environment or use hooks, for example, to kind of control when it stops. So again, we're going to go deep into this. I just want to show you guys how easy the product is to take the intimidation factor out of the way for you and essentially prep you for next week where we're going to use this extensively. So let's work on exploring Claude from the beginning. So we've looked at the different subscription tiers, okay? We have two types of plans. So yearly, you do save 17%. On a monthly basis, you're paying $20 a month. This is pretty much everything you get. You do get access to Cowork, and I'll show you Cowork right now. So I had an issue with Cowork where I don't know if it was due to the war or a lot of people signing up, but the virtual machine that it runs on, because it seems like they spin up a virtual machine every time you create a conversation, was turning off or would turn off mid-session. Sometimes it would be an SDK issue and it would just turn off. So it's pretty much like the chat, but what you have to do is designate a local folder where it can actually edit files for you. So a good way to describe it would be to call it Claude Code for non-coders, right? So think of it as a coworker, and it can create scheduled tasks for you. So you chat with it the same way you chat with ChatGPT or Claude Chat if that's what you're doing. If that's your go-to chatbot, you simply click new task right here. You name it, you give it a description, you tell it what to do, you tell it the frequency, and you have some more options. You can tell it to work within a specific folder. You can tell it which model to use, and you can set it. And this is the equivalent of what is commonly referred to as in development as a cron job, right? So there's so many ways to do this. There's ways to do this on Coolify, and inside of the courses, I'll show you how to do that, or actually just simply how to tell Claude Code how to do that for you. And everything changes after that. So that is Cowork. Now let's dive really quick into chat. And a lot of this is going to be blurred out, but I'm going to cover the basics for you really quick. So let's look into customization. The first thing you want to do whenever you open it is you want to set it up. You want to tell it your preferences, like, hey, don't use dashes, turn on notification settings, choose your theme, choose the font, for example. And then you want to set up your privacy settings, turn off location metadata, help improve Claude. That's really up to you. Fix your billing. And then most importantly, you can track your usage from here. Especially if you're on the $20 plan, you want to kind of get an idea of how to use this section, how to monitor it. This is where you go. But trust me, you're going to get really frustrated if you're becoming a power user and you're on the $20 plan. This is where you're going to make that decision to switch over to at least the $100 plan. So the $200 is overkill if you really don't need it that much, or you don't use it, you don't do any coding, you're good on the $20 plan. But if you do coding, if you work on projects, the first one you want to start off with is the $100 plan. Then let's go ahead and explore capabilities. This is where you can generate memories from chats so it can remember things about you. This is where you can turn on artifacts, AI-powered artifacts, such as creating apps and prototypes, which you can access here to the top left. Allow network egress, which is allow it to essentially, when you're doing a web search or you ask it to search or verify information, sometimes there are, by default, from Anthropic, some websites that are blocked, and this is where you allow them. You're essentially just creating an allow list here. And you could also allow it to execute code for creating PDFs. I do that sometimes when I'm creating project proposals or like some mock data that I need to test out an application. And then let's dive into skills. Now, I'm going to give you guys some resources. I'm going to populate them as we go along. And this is where I started off creating my skills. Now I use Claude Code, but you can use guardrails, advanced, and they have some examples for you right here, like MCP Builder, for example. You can check these out. You could use them or you could build on top of them, but it's quite easy. And all you have to do is invoke them through the chat. Really what these look like are markdown files like this. And you can invoke them in the chat. You could say, hey, Claude, use the MCP Builder skill to craft an MCP server. And here are the credentials, for example. And it will just do it for you because Claude is really that good. And the second thing we're going to look at is connectors. Now, these connectors and the plugins, for example, so if we go to browse plugins right here, so essentially what you're doing here is you're giving Anthropic at any set of time when you switch these in the chat, a particular set of skills. For example, here you have marketing, sales, product management, legal, and operations and finance. So you give it this, you're essentially turning Claude into an employee. So there's so many ways that you can turn Claude into an employee. And imagine you're just doing that for $20, as little as $20 a month. I want to show you guys what Anthropic is capable of. And really the purpose behind today's webinar is to get you used to Claude so you can ease into the more technical stuff that we're going to do. So really, this is just a primer, gives you kind of a complete rundown. Feel free to go and experiment with these yourself. Don't get intimidated by it. Don't be intimidated by it. These are amazing, amazing tools. And if you're not using them and understanding them, you're not going to be able to level up to the more advanced features. So start here and then go to the advanced features, which is essentially what this series of webinars is going to do for you. And of course, once you sign up, or if you decide to sign up to one of the more premium tiers, you're going to get access to the courses where there's going to be a lot of tips and tricks, and essentially me guiding you by the hand, showing you how to use all the advanced features and giving you templates that you can essentially implement immediately. All right, then connectors. So this is my favorite right here. So you can configure your GitHub. You can configure many, many other things. So this is actually right here what you see above under this line. This Claude in Chrome is actually the Chrome plugin. Coolify, Discourse, Git, Hostinger, all of these are MCP. So I actually took the local file, which you can access in Developer right here, and then I connected it. I gave it all these credentials right here so it can read data. I can ask it quick questions, get ideas, and then maybe even craft articles or scripts or whatever is needed. You can also give it access to your Gmail or Google Calendar. I already do that via the CLI, so I don't use these, but for you, this could be a very quick way to set it up to turn it into your fully rounded assistant. I connected it to Canva, to GitHub, my Google Drive. And when you're creating projects, like for example, this one right here, this is IDE Project Manager. And there's so much in here for the files that I added from my Google Docs. And of course, it saves memories as well. So this is pretty much a great way to start fleshing out your agent in a sense. So create a project, put all your data in there. And once you understand the workflow, you have several chats, then you have a good idea of how to turn that into a skill, then eventually turn that into an agent. So you spin it up and you just plug in that skill, and now you have that employee. And then I'll show you next week how you can keep the context going in an ongoing database so that you always have context and you never run out, and then your life will change pretty much. This is how you start off. You go settings, you do one by one, you connect all your connectors, but you want to start from top to bottom, of course. And then you get to Claude Code. So here I already allow it to bypass permissions. This is where you do it on the desktop app. Again, you cannot access this online on the browser version. So this is only the desktop version. Draw attention to notifications. And a lot of these are pretty much self-explanatory. And this is where you manage your authorized tokens. This is me logging into hundreds of CLI sessions, so on and so on. And then you get to Cowork, you put global instructions here. And this is specific to the desktop application. So what I want to focus on for this one is the developer. And this one right here is, if you click edit config, it's pretty much going to spin up a Windows. This is pretty much how we use these. So let's go back and talk about costs really quick. If you are using OpenClaw, you should expect, or at least understand what you're walking into, because if you're not expecting huge API bills, you have no clue what you're doing. It's going to cost you a lot in API fees. I do believe that you can probably use it with maybe one of the Chinese models, like you can authenticate and then use it with maybe like Minimax. But I don't use the Chinese models. To be honest, I've never found a reason myself to switch from Claude, because it just never ceases to impress. It's really good, it's really effective, and most importantly, it is extremely cost effective. When it gives me the ability not only to organize my brain, but it executes quickly, it's accurate 80% of the time at least. And then it also is like a co-developer where it really assists and does research in real time and updates documents and keeps my context aware, and is really charismatic at sometimes, like, and it understands how to execute a project for $100 a month. This is a crazy deal. Like, I understand it's subsidized. It might not always be subsidized, like in terms of token usage or token costs rather, but this is an insanely good deal. Like, I don't hire freelancers to help me from Upwork anymore. And I used to spend at least $2,500 a month doing so. Now it's down to $100. So there's an extra $2,400 in my pocket at the end of the month. So it just doesn't make sense to hire specific jobs. And you could already tell there are many jobs that are going to start to disappear. There are many SaaS companies that are going to disappear, especially SaaS companies that are, trying to charge you a little bit of extra cash for, dealing the tokens to you, like 3% commission or whatever it is. So there's a massive shift happening. And if you are relying on companies that are bloated, adding new features, they don't care if you're launching your MVP, they don't care if your database works, they don't care if you lost money, and they always like we already told you we're going to make these changes, but then they make the changes anyway, like F you at the end, and you're paying them over $100 a month. You need to get your priorities straight, and you need to think about what's important for your business. You need to go to an AI lab that creates a superior product that offers you a lot for what you are paying them. The economics make sense for them. They will always find funding. But the smaller companies who are latching on to technologies such as OpenClaw just out of desperation to survive are likely not going to continue to get funding. So you have to really think about the infrastructure that you are choosing to build your business on. If you learn how to build that infrastructure yourself using Claude Code, a superior model, then you are set for the future, and you are one of the people who will actually be making money in the future. And if you are not in that class of people in the future who know how to build with AI, who understand the tools, who understand how to articulate ideas to AI, then just think how difficult your life might be. So with that being said, this is the perfect segue to talk about the upcoming newsletter. So I want to bring you guys information that is relevant, not just about Claude Code, but anything that might be relevant to you as a no-coder, as an independent builder, as a business owner, somebody who wants to use AI and understand how to deal with AI, to use it maybe to organize your life or business, or just to get it to do things for you or build for you. So this newsletter is still in the making. It should be ready maybe in the next 14 days. So if you are interested to receive information that is useful to you and will help you remain on the cutting edge of AI, then the builders list is the newsletter for you. If you want to be added to the mailing list, go join PPA, apply to join. You're going to find the first post pinned at the top. Go ahead and comment, join waiting list, or just say hello and just mention to me that you want to join the waiting list. I'll already have your email from school.com, and I'll go ahead and add you to that mailing list. And with that being said, we have come to the end of our webinar. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it and got a lot of value out of it. This is just the tip of the iceberg. You have seen nothing yet. If you're new to Claude Code, there's a lot coming, and you're going to really, really benefit from the next 3 webinars over the next 3 weeks. If you already know the power of Claude and you are here for tips and tricks, and you're in the right place, go ahead and join Premium so you can get access to those courses. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to DM me or talk to me in the feed. I'll see you guys next week. Take care. Bye-bye.